Hello there everybody! Today I will be teaching you how to advance a lot of frames in a very short time in Pokemon Black 2 and Pokemon White 2 by making use of the Xtranceiver and the C-Gear. I'll be using my English copy of Pokemon Black 2 for this guide, but the process is exactly the same across all languages. These methods are not applicable for Black and White 1, as the C-Gear works very differently there, and the Xtranceiver cannot be activated as easily as it can be in Black and White 2. Before we get started, I'll go over what you need to have in-game and what you should know about to be able to make proper use of the methods I'll explain later. You need to have calibrated your game and console combination for Gen 5 RNG and should have at least a bit of prior Gen 5 RNG experience. Like maybe your RNG'd a few stationary or wild Pokemon before. But if you haven't done any of that yet, I'll link some useful guides from my friend I'm a Blissey that'll help you get started with Gen 5 RNG. You should also download a special, newer version of the program RNG Reporter we call Rambo's Fork, as it includes many bug fixes and feature additions for Gen 5 RNG and will be required for the last thing I'll be showing you later. There's also two very important changes Rambo's Fork made that are very important to remember. First change is that the IV RNG now starts at frame 0 instead of frame 1, so if you search for a seed and don't want to do any IV RNG advances, you would need to search for an IV RNG frame of 0 and not 1, like in the older RNG Reporter versions. The second change is that instead of stopping one frame before your target PID RNG frame, you now stop on your target PID RNG frame to get the Pokemon you desire. I'll put the link to the download page into the description below. In-game you will need to have beaten the first gym to get the C-Gear from Bianca. The Xtranceiver on the other hand you already have from the very start of your adventure, and you could theoretically even use it for starter RNG if you're crazy enough. You should also go to the in-game settings and disable the Save Before IR option, otherwise it'll disrupt the methods I'm gonna explain later. A Chatot or preferably 2 are also highly recommended for any Gen 5 RNG, though it is possible without Chatot 2 if you enjoy suffering. You can instead use saving the game as a means to advance and confirm you're on the correct seed, though it will be much slower and a lot more difficult if there's any randomly moving NPCs or other interference in the area. Here's an overview over what Safe Spinner's starting position correspond to what Chatot pitch height. This chart isn't always 100% accurate though, as all the edge cases of each spinner can belong to the next closest spinner as well. I'd guess perhaps due to some rounding the game does, but I don't know for sure why this happens. But now let me briefly try and explain the way the random number generator works in Gen 5. Unlike previous generations like Gens 3 and 4, in Gen 5 the RNG for things like wild, stationary or gift Pokemon is divided into two separate RNG algorithms that are commonly referred to as the PID RNG and the IV RNG. The PID RNG controls the encounter slot, nature, ability, gender, and PID, which includes shininess, of the Pokemon you encounter. Other than that, it also advances whenever NPCs with random movement patterns try to move, when any weather condition aside from fog is active in the overworld, when you run through tall grass to encounter a Pokemon, and many more less noteworthy things that we usually don't much care for in RNG manipulation. The IV RNG on the other hand controls pretty much only the IVs of the Pokemon you encounter. It also advances in battle at 60 FPS for each Pokemon that's on the field, every time you move Pokemon around in your boxes, whenever the 128 step friendship counter is triggered, at about 600 FPS when viewing your medals via the medal box in Black and White 2, or by using different functions of the C-Gear. The two RNG algorithms being separate means that whilst one of them, usually the PID RNG, may advance hundreds of frames, the other could just remain unchanged, which is also why you would almost always search for a minimum and maximum IV RNG frame of 1, or 0 in Rambo's RNG Reporter fork. But by using the C-Gear, we can actually advance the IV RNG in a fast and controlled manner, but more on that later. Alright, with all that out of the way, let us begin. I'll start by showing you how you can make use of the Xtranceiver to skip a lot of PID RNG frames very quickly instead of having to do hundreds of Chatot to get some 6 IV targets or rare encounter slots for example. My target is going to be a Delibird on Route 22. Now as you can see in this table I made, normally Route 22 has one randomly moving NPC which can and will advance some PID RNG frames during Sweet Sense or Honey's Pokemon summoning animation. However, as you can see just right after NPC count of 1, this route does have a silent area, which includes the entire western grass field, meaning the NPC is not loaded as long as we stay there. Now sometimes the descriptions for silent areas can be a bit hard to understand, so I made a comprehensive document detailing all you need to know about the moving NPCs in Black and White 1 and Black and White 2, including specific pictures for all silent areas that is linked in the description below. If we scroll down to Route 22 for example, we can see that this entire part left of the red line is silent and with that useful for RNG manipulation. My target Delibird will be at PID RNG frame 751 and it requires a jolly Pokemon with the ability Synchronize in the lead of my party, or else Delibird will have a different nature. My target Delibird will appear on July 20th, 2024 at 10:55 AM and 46 seconds, and I'll need to press and hold the start, down and X buttons once my game is starting up, so I get my desired seed. Now let me set the date, and then shortly after the time, 10:55 already in here, and then as per usual you confirm the time in your console and start the timer at the same time. Alright, I'll skip ahead until the timer runs out so you don't have to wait for the full 46 seconds. See you in a moment. Alright, timer's about to run out. Pressing and holding start, down X, as is required of course. Alright. I wish you could disable the C-Gear pop-up. Gets annoying after hundreds of RNGs, every time having to disable it. Well, almost every time. Alright, that sounds good. Mid into high. To lower, into high. To lower. Into high. Perfect. I think we're on the right seat. Let's look into the main window. Alright, I think we're on frame 58. Let's do 5 more for good measure. Sounds perfect. Alright. So we're on frame 62. And we want to get to frame 721. So, equals 721 minus 68. 68? No, 62, right? Minus 62. So 659 frames are left for us to advance. What we're gonna use now is the Xtranceiver, and every time I activate it, it advances approximately 87 frames. So we calculate 659 divided by 87. We can do the Xtranceiver advance 7 full times. And after 7 full times we will be on frame 62 plus 87 times 7 on frame 671 and have to advance about 80 frames manually. Let's do this 7 times now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Alright. Now, like I said, we should be around frame 671. Let me change the frames in the main window real quick. So, and about... For each time you use the Xtranceiver, I'd say there's an error a margin of error, of about 4 frames. So we used it 7 times, so that's 7 times 4, so 28. 28 frames of a margin of error. So instead of frame 671, we could also be on 699 or on 643, I think, if my maths check out. I don't even have 643 here because it's very unlikely that we got such a large margin of error. And I'll first try and identify what frame we're on, just like that. Okay, pretty high into a fair bit lower. two very high ones in a row here, basically. Okay, I have no idea where we are, but that's not a problem, because Rambo's RNG reporter fork added a very nice feature that you probably can't see right now. If you right-click into the generated results here, there's a little pop-up, and there you can see the Gen 5 frame finder. I'll click on that. Let me quickly pull that up here. Alright, let me make that window a bit larger. Alright, and now the frame finder just uses whatever frames you have currently generated in the main window, and here you can search by chat or pitches. Alright, let's listen to 5 chat hops for now, and I'll put them in here. So pretty high. Again. Very, very low. High. Pretty low. A bit mid, but I'm unsure. So, you basically only ever want to use these 5 bottom buttons. In very rare cases I also use the very high or very low, if it's very clear to me that it is very high or very low. But this is just to avoid not finding a result because of one that is like an 79 mid-high or something that you identify as a high falsely. So I definitely recommend just going with these. And whenever you're unsure, just put any. I very often put any when something sounds a bit mid, like right now. So just to be safe, on the safe side, I always do that. Let's listen to like 2 or 3 more until we get one result here. Alright, we seem to be on 656 right now. Let me make the frame finder disappear again real quick. 656. So a bit earlier than I expected, but that's okay. Not too early. And then we just do a couple more chat outs, see if this is really where we're at. Alright, all matches, perfect. And now we can just advance to our target frame, which is about 70 further advances away, but that's okay. It's better than doing 700 advances manually, only having to do 10% of that. Alright, we're about to approach our target. There it is. Now again, in Rambo's RNG reporter fork, you stop on your target frame, not one before like you would in older RNG reporter versions. And now I just use honey, and we should see a nice Delibird shiny. Perfect. Very, very perfect. Alright, our Jolly synchronizes out as well. I don't remember what moves you have. Oh, you have Hypnosis, that's nice. So let's try and sleep that fella. And let's go to Herald. I should have just switched to this immediately, but that's okay. We'll just false swipe it now. It still sleeps, very nice. And we'll just go for a heal ball for the color coordination with the pink and a bit of white in there. Well, not quite white, but close enough. Very nice. No, I do not want to give a nickname to Delibird. Okay, and there we have it. Our nice 5 IV Jolly Delibird. One more thing I forgot to mention. The cross transceiver, the way we advance is that we activate it and immediately spam B to deactivate it, because once you activate the C-Gear, it starts advancing the PID RNG at 120 frames per second. So if you leave it on for even just a couple of seconds, it will have advanced 500, maybe even 1,000 frames or more, so I don't recommend really dealing with that, unless your target is actually on frame, I don't know, 5,000 or something, but you basically never have to advance 5,000 frames, even with the most specific Pokemon you want, with the methods I'll explain later in the video. And just like that, We advanced about 700 PID RNG frames in approximately 1.5, maybe 2 minutes. Very easy and pretty fast. But we can do even more to make finding seeds in Black and White 2 easier by advancing the IV RNG in a controlled manner with the help of the C-Gear, which, by the way, also opens up the usage of Pass Powers, but more on those later. Almost anything you do with the C-Gear advances some amount of IV RNG frames. However, the C-Gear also constantly advances some PID RNG, which is something you have to keep in mind when using it. I did a bit of testing and it seems the rate at which the C-Gear advances PID RNG is pretty slow at about 0.8 frames per second on average. Now it doesn't actually advance 0.8 frames of course, but instead just advances like 1 to 2 frames every 2 to 3 seconds. If we are in an area with randomly moving NPCs however, they will have several short time windows to advance frames in between us advancing IV RNG, so it's gonna be a fair bit more than just 0.8 PID RNG advances per second if there's any such NPCs in the currently loaded area. Before I do the next example wild RNG, let me go over what actions advance how many IV RNG frames. The first thing that will always advance some IV RNG is turning on the C-Gear, which automatically advances the IV RNG by 2 frames. After that, we will mostly be using the infrared battle search with our battle box Pokemon, as that can advance different amounts of IV RNG frames depending on how many Pokemon we currently have in our battle box, but also advances differing amounts of PID RNG frames each time we do a search. If we have one Pokemon in our battle box and do an infrared battle search using that battle box, 11 IV RNG and 3 PID RNG frames will advance. With 2 Pokemon in the battle box, it's 18 IV RNG and 5 PID RNG. With 3, it's 25 IV RNG and 7 PID RNG. With 4, it's 32 IV and 9 PID. With 5, 39 IV and 11 PID. And with 6, 46 IV and 13 PID RNG frames. Now whilst this already gives us many different frames to hit, there's another feature of the C-Gear we can make use of to advance frames in a controlled manner, but in smaller steps than the infrared battle search using the battle box allows us to do, which is the feelings check. Entering the feeling check screen advances the IV RNG by 2 frames, and every time you press begin search, that's another 2 IV RNG frames and 1 PID RNG frame that gets advanced. If we then combine the infrared battle search using the battle box together with the feelings check feature, we can advance almost any amount of IV RNG frames we want, but we cannot get to 1, 3, 5, 7 or 9 IV RNG frames. This is due to the earliest possible uneven advance we can get to being 13 via a combination of activating the C-Gear for 2 IV RNG advances and doing an infrared battle search with 1 Pokemon in our battle box for 11 IV RNG advances. There is no other way to reliably get a lower amount of uneven IV RNG advances, unfortunately, but being able to hit all but 6 specific IV RNG frames doesn't sound so bad to me. Another thing worth mentioning is that the time-based PID RNG advances of the C-Gear are paused whilst an infrared search is active on this screen, or whilst you are in the feeling check screen. Now for an example wild RNG which will incorporate both the IV RNG advances via the C-Gear and the cross-transceiver PID RNG advances I explained earlier. This time the target is a Sunkern and Route 20's Darkgrass. Route 20 also got a silent area, but for Darkgrass and surfing encounters only this time. If you want to do this in a location with randomly moving NPCs and no silent area, I recommend picking a PID RNG frame of 150 or higher as your target, just so you got enough frames of leeway regardless of the amount of NPCs. The Sunkern will have a timid nature on PID RNG frame 400 and IV RNG frame 91 and will require me to bring a female Pokemon with the ability Cute Charm in the lead, or else it may not be shiny, not have the correct encounter slot, or a different nature. Our target seed will be on May 28th at 2:38 AM and 45 seconds. I'll need to press and hold the L and Y buttons to get my desired seed. Let's start. I will skip ahead until the timer runs out again. See you in a moment. Alright, timer's about to run out, getting ready to hold my buttons. Alright, pressing and holding L and Y. Alright. Let's see if we hit our target seed. Perfect. Alright, we're on frame 58. Very nice. And now we do our IV RNG advances. We need to get to IV frame 91. I put 3 Pokemon into my battle box, as you can see here. So that means that every time we do an infrared battle search via the C-Gear, IV RNG will advance by 25 frames. We do this 3 times, so we get 75 frames. Then we get 2 frames for activating the C-Gear, so that's frame 77. And then we go into the feelings check screen, going there also advances 2, that brings us to 79. And then since activating a feelings check advances 2 IV RNG frames, we do this 6 more times to get 12 more frames to get to frame 91. Alright, activate the C-Gear, spam A, spam X, spam B, and go on the touch screen, battle, battle, battle. Now one thing you may not forget, the C-Gear generally constantly advances PID RNG very slowly, as I mentioned earlier. And whilst you're in this particular screen here, for example, the PID RNG advances are stopped. There is no advances, random advances, let's say, or time-based advances happening right now. Once we get out of here, it starts up again. So we want to be quick once we're not in that screen. When we're in that screen, we can take our time, but otherwise we will need to be fast. Alright, we're now on 2 plus 25, 25, 25, so on frame 77. Now going into the feelings check. Now on 79, and in here the PID RNG advances also stop. So no need to hurry in here, everything is fine. Every time now we do a check, we need 6, so we get 12 IV RNG advances. 1 PID RNG frame will also advance. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Perfect. Now we can exit out and deactivate the C-Gear, so it doesn't continue advancing our IV frames when we don't PID frames, sorry, when we don't want it to. Now, that will have advanced around 7 PID frames for the 3 Pokemon in our battle box, and 6 PID frames for the 6 times we did a feelings check, meaning we're at the very least on frame 71. But probably, much more likely, we're quite a bit further than that. Because of the time-based advances, I'd guess we're around frames 80 to 90. Let's listen if we can find where we're at in the RNG. Okay. Okay. Alright, this is a bit difficult to determine, I would say. We might be here, 91 to 101. Let's listen to a few more. Yes, okay. So we're actually 10 further than I thought, but that's okay. In case you do not find what frame you're at after this, you can use a neat little feature called the frame finder. If I right click into the generated results in Rambo's RNG Reporter Fork only, a little menu pops up. I don't think you can see that right now, but I'll post a screenshot of that, or I edit in a screenshot of that later. And then you go to Gen 5 Frame Finder, and this little window will pop up. And then you can just input a couple of chatters that you hear. Like in this case, we heard a rather mid, into a mid-low to low, into a pretty low one. Those were like here, 99, 100, 101. And into a very low one, into a rather high one, not necessarily the highest, but fairly high, into another medium low one, and into another medium one. Alright, now we have 2 results left. We could continue doing a few chatters for this, but it doesn't really matter, honestly. We basically know it won't have advanced to 145, so 105 is the one we're at right now. Well, I don't remember actually if this is the exact frame. Alright, we were already on 108. That's okay though. So let me put that. One last thing in regards to this. You basically only ever want to use these buttons here. If you're unsure what chatter pitch you hear, you can just put any. That is perfectly fine. Then you will even see what it shows here. Like if you put in any and you think it sounded rather mid but aren't sure, and it shows mid and low, you can be sure that it's this one. And generally you never want to use these just in case you mishear. You always want to try and mostly put in the high mid highs, mid low lows. If you dare, you can also put in these, but theoretically you could just put like 2 highs, 2 any's, a low, a high, an any, a low, and then find your frame that way. But now let me make that disappear again. Okay, we're on frame 110, and we need to go to frame 400. That leaves us about 390 frames. 290 frames to advance. That means if we do cross-transceiver advances 3 times, we'll be round about at frame 371, which is 29 away from our target, which just sounds perfect to me. 29 leaves enough space in case we mess up a little, and will most definitely not skip over our target frame, even if we are a bit bad on the timing. Alright, I did that 3 times, so we're now on 371 approximately. I say plus minus 4 for each advance that you do in a row, so plus minus 12 maximum. Could be exactly here actually. No, not likely. I am actually not certain where we are right now. Pretty high. Okay, that's fine, because now we can use our good old friend Gen 5 Frame Finder. We only have a few frames left, probably, so the Frame Finder adjusts based on what frames you have in here. We know we must be around 379. So let's say, for good measure, 360 is the minimum frame. 360 is the minimum frame, and we have maybe 50 frames after that. Alright, let me blend in the frame finder again. And now we can just only have 50 possible results, meaning we need less chatters for the frame finder to show results. Pretty high. That sounded, I don't know, I'm not sure what that sounded like. Again high. Probably rather mid. Another mid. Alright, I think we're on 387. Let's have a look if the remaining chatters also match up with that. Oh wait, I forgot to put that away. Alright, and now you can see. Perfect, all matches up, very nice. And now we will start a double battle via honey or sweet scent, of course, as per usual. And this should be, I think the right of the 2 Pokemon will be a shiny Sunkern. Yes! Yes, indeed. Perfect. And that's really how simple it is. Alright, let's Swift this Sewaddle and Spore the Sunkern. Please don't die, Sunkern. Hallelujah! I forgot that Swift hits both Pokemon. Whew. That was a bit dicey, I am not gonna lie. Let me just Spore again, it doesn't matter. That thing is still alive? Come on. Because you can't throw a ball when there is 2 Pokemon on the field, so I gotta wait. Please don't wake up, Sunkern. Of course Sunkern woke up. Alright. And now we, of course, just try to catch it with an Ultra Ball, because why not? Another critical capture, like last time. Nice. Very nice. Now let's whip out the IV calculator, just to be certain. No, I don't want to nickname it. That we hit the right IV RNG frame, because, you know, I'm only human, I can miscount. Things happen. Of course, it's only level 11, so it won't show as precise of an IV range. However, it shows us a precise enough IV range to know whether or not we hit the right IV frame. Wow, it even shows exactly 31. Okay, well, nice. That's that, I guess. That concludes this next RNG attempt. How amazing is that? That's all. May take some practice to get used to, but once you know how, it's pretty easy to do and makes Black and White 2 RNG manipulation just a lot more flexible than Black and White 1. I've also been live streaming a shiny living Perfect IV National Dex project using RNG manipulation, so if you're interested in seeing these methods I explain in my videos in action a bit more, I'll put a link to the playlist down in the description. We still are not done yet, however, as the C-Gear method is even more flexible by opening up the way for Entralink Pass Powers to be used. To get access to these Pass Powers, you need to do so-called Fundfest missions to level up your entry to certain levels. For some Pass Powers you do need both Black 2 and White 2, however, and do Funfest missions with the other game in another console, switching up which game starts the mission so you can increase both your Black and your White entry levels. The Pass Power we most care about, Lucky Power, is one of those that need both games, unfortunately. If you do have both games though, I made a video with a route that gives you a lot of points for relatively fast leveling of your entry that you can find in the description. Now, what makes Lucky Power so fantastic for RNG manipulation are two things. First off, it makes rarer encounter slots more common, but if you use Lucky Power on level 3 specifically, you also get an increase in shiny odds from the standard 1 in 8192 down to only 1 in 4096, which makes shinies twice as likely. This opens up a lot more possible shiny frames than what you'd be able to find without it, and makes it easier to aim for Pokemon on rare encounter slots such as 10 or 11. There's a French Pokemon wiki site that has all the details regarding Lucky Power's effects that is also linked in the description. I can't read French, but with the help of Google Translate, it's still an interesting read. Let me also show you an example wild RNG in which I'll be using both earlier explained methods and the usage of Lucky Power. My target is a bold Mantike in Andela Bay via surfing. Surfing, fishing and swarm encounters can have different levels on the same encounter slot in these games. Usually a specific encounter slot would have one Pokemon species on one specific level, but since Mantike is a surfing encounter, it has a level range on its encounter slot and it can be between levels 25 to 40. To make training later easier, we're gonna specifically aim for a level 40 Mantike. Our target is on PID RNG frame 377 and IV RNG frame 52, and it will require the usage of both a bold synchronized lead and Lucky Power on level 3. Without Lucky Power being active, it may not be a shiny, be a different encounter slot than what we wanted, have a different nature, or something else could be wrong with it. I again picked a location with a silent area, and for Andela Bay, both the first few water tiles after the entrance to Seaside Cave and the eastern about 15 to 20% of the bay are silent. My target seed is on the 24th of March 2024 at 9:48 AM and 31 seconds, and it requires the buttons start, left and down to be pressed and held. Let's start. I'll again skip ahead until the timer runs out. Alright, my timer's about to run out. Getting ready to press and hold the buttons. Pressing and holding. Start left down. Alright. Let's listen to the chat out. Alright, that sounds very, very good. I think we're on 57. Let's just do 3 more for good measure. All match, perfect. Now let's do our IV RNG advances. Turn on C-Gear. AXE. I only put 4 Pokemon into my battle box. I should have put 6. I kind of forgot. But since we only have 4, we only get 32 advances. We could have already had 46 if I put 6 Pokemon in there, but that's fine. I'll just adjust. That means we're now on 2 for turning on the C-Gear, plus 32 for doing the battle box IV advance via infrared. That's overall 34. And then plus another 2 for overall frame 36, because we entered feelings check. Meaning we need 16 more advances to get to 52. So we do this feelings check 8 times, each time advancing 2 IV frames to get to 52. 38, 40, 42, 44, 46, 48, 50, 52. Now, Lucky Power level 3. Activated. This does not advance any IV RNG at all, so you can just comfortably do this at the end of your RNG, of your IV RNG advances. Sorry. Alright. For the feelings check, we advanced 6 times. Not 6 times, sorry, 8 times, so that's 8 advances. 8 PID RNG advances. Our battle box had 4 Pokemon in it, so that's I think 9. Yes, 9 PID RNG advances. Meaning we're at the very least 17 PID RNG advances in. So 77 is the minimum frame we're on right now, because we are stopped on 60. But with all the time that's passed, I think we're more around like 90 to 100 now. So let's have a look, or listen rather. Could be here. Perfect. Alright, we're on frame 100. Our target frame is 377. That means equals 377 minus 100. We've got 277 frames left. Then 277 divided by 87. We can do it the cross-transceiver advance 3 times to save us round about like 260 or something PID frames to advance. That means, and it will land us on approximately 100 plus 87 times 3, frame 361 if all goes well. So let's already scroll down here. Should be round about here once we do 3 cross-transceiver advances. Number 1. Number 2. Number 3. Just saved us about 260 chat-out pitches. Alright, let's listen. That is very, very low. I could imagine it being 353. Indeed. Okay, we're on 356 now. And now we just advanced to our target. We got 4 possible shiny frames here, but we of course only care about the very first one because only that one has slot 1, Bold Nature with Synchronize and level 40. Alright, we stop on our target frame as is the norm with Rambo's RNG Reporter Fog. And then we use Sweet Scent or Honey. I prefer to use Honey as in areas with moving NPCs. Honey has a shorter Pokemon summoning time, leaving less time for the NPCs to advance. And there's our Mantike, very nice. Now just gotta catch it. Good thing I have my Harald here. I wanted to name him Harold, but I somehow messed up and named him Harald instead. Very German name. Alright, I hope this thing doesn't have any move to hurt itself, because if it does, then... Alright, there it is. And as I was saying, Mantike learns takedown, so be careful not to get it down to 1 HP, it might kill itself. Yes. Isn't that wonderful? You see? Takedown. Alright. Now, I think this one we gotta catch in a dive ball. Wait, I don't have a dive ball on me? Come on, game. Well, I guess a netball will do fine as well. No critical capture this time. That's okay. We got it anyway. We did not get it yet. That was a fake out. Let's try again. Come on. Seriously? 3 shakes twice? What the hell is this thing's catch rate? If I go for false swipe, it's gonna wake up again and go for takedown immediately. I just know that already. So I'm not gonna risk it. Come on, stay in the ball, Mantike. Thank you. Thank you kindly. Alright. No, thank you. Let's have a look at the IV calc. Alert to sounds. That sounds alright. Mantike, Nature Bolt. Alert to sounds, level 40. 98 HP, 18 attack, 62 defense, 65 special attack, 113 special defense and 57 speed. And that means check out, we got precisely what we wanted. Very, very nice. Alright, that's not really any more complicated than just using the C-Gear for IV RNG advances, but the benefit of using Lucky Powers is great. In case you should misclick on the touchscreen and accidentally use any of the other functions of the C-Gear, I've also tested what all of them do exactly in terms of IV RNG advances and will shortly list it here. Initiating an infrared search with your party Pokemon instead of your Battlebox Pokemon advances 4 IV RNG frames. Pressing on trade or friend code exchange also advances 4 IV RNG each. Exiting out of the infrared menu without having used any of its options does not advance any IV RNG. Turning on the cross transceiver from the C-Gear advances 4 IV RNG frames, but whilst it's on, PID RNG advances crazy fast at 120 FPS, as mentioned earlier. Trying to enter the Entralink in a location where you can't enter it advances 2 IV RNG frames, and actually entering the Entralink, if the game allows you to, also advances 2 IV RNG frames. Entering the online option itself does not advance any IV RNG, and it'll always ask you to save the game if you try to use GameSync or go to the Wi-Fi settings, so you can't even accidentally activate those. Entering the question mark, aka the help section of the C-Gear, does not advance any IV RNG. Pressing the middle button does not advance any IV RNG either, and neither does using the comment function in the screen after. Activating a pass power also doesn't advance any IV RNG. And with that, we are done. I hope you all learned something new and are now able to go for more specific targets much easier. If you have any questions, my friend I'mABlissy has a great Discord server for assistance with RNG manipulation, in which I'm also fairly active, at least at the time of making this video. I'll put a link to it into the description. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed, please leave a like and consider subscribing. Have a wonderful day. Goodbye.